Hey, Kiri, this is Robert Ian with ConquerChange.com. This past week on March 27th, there was an interview with Elon Musk and about a dozen CEOs who participate on the Doge team. Brett Baier on Fox News spent about 40 minutes trying to frame the larger picture of what Doge is attempting to accomplish. There were many examples cited regarding systemic inefficiencies, redundancies from computer systems that are very old, many of which do not communicate with each other, and outright fraud. The stated goal of Doge is to reduce the deficit by $1 trillion, essentially cutting it in half, and by extension, cutting federal spending from $7 trillion to $6 trillion annually. And all of this supposedly without affecting critical government services. One of the CEOs on the panel said that the criticisms he's hearing about Doge are not lining up with their experience on the ground, and that those criticisms tend to be more generalized, to which their response has been, which line item of the cost savings do you disagree with? The messaging was well presented and I believe will resonate in particular with younger and more technologically aware segments of the population. However, there were some rather large unanswered questions that remained throughout the interview. And I was actually quite surprised that Brett Baier didn't ask more aggressive follow-on questions that would dig deeper into the ramifications and consequences of what Doge is certifying that they have found. In our discussion today, I'll focus on several of those key follow-on questions that Fox News failed to ask. First, several key findings were presented that formed the outline of the interview. The centerpiece of the project revolves around the idea that Doge is applying public company standards to the federal government. The CEOs emphasized that departments of the U.S. government would not be able to pass a financial audit, like the audits that public companies are required to pass on a regular basis. One example cited was the NIH, that has 27 different centers, with 27 different chief information officers, utilizing 700 different IT systems that apparently can't communicate with one another. They indicated that 40% of the phone calls received by Social Security are from fraudsters, who regularly attempt to convince Social Security representatives to change people's direct deposit information over the phone. In the efficiency realm, there's a cap on the number of federal employees who can retire each month, which is around 8,000 people. The system that houses retirement records is paper-based and uses filing cabinets, which creates a processing bottleneck for the retirement process. An area of much concern, discussion, and debate is within Social Security. It was stated there are over 15 million people over the age of 120 who are marked as alive in the Social Security system. This has apparently been known since 2008. Several days after the interview aired, the Doge website indicated there were approximately 12 million recipients marked as alive over the age of 120. 9.9 million of them were now marked as deceased, with another 2 million to go, making the actual number about 12 million instead of the previously stated 15 million people. Reading through the Doge website at doge.gov will show a long list of various contracts being canceled by the auditors. This reminded me of Senator William Proxmire from Wisconsin, who started the Golden Fleece Awards during his tenure as a U.S. Senator. Back in his day, the Golden Fleece Award was considered a satirical award given to frivolous research conducted with government grants. I grew up in Wisconsin and was very familiar with this branding and marketing stunt used by Proxmire, which resulted in giggles and winks from the media and voters alike. However, there are no giggles and winks with the activities of Doge. In some places, there is outright hostility. It's a sad observation, but in my opinion, most people will not visit the Doge website to read and analyze what is being posted. Sadly, as with most things, including political items, people tend to receive their education in sound bites from the media, rather than reading the legislation, reports, and websites, and ultimately making their own choices based on the facts they themselves have read. And when we do listen to people like Elon Musk and the CEOs who are the new face of Doge, we have to listen carefully, and not only to what is said, but what isn't said as well. In the Brett Baier interview, there was no follow-on questioning or scrutiny to an open-ended implication that seemed to be left hanging for the viewer to infer the answer. The inference I'm referring to is the 15 million people cited as alive who were listed as over 120 years old, which, as we now know from the Doge website, is closer to 12 million people listed as over 120. What was never openly discussed or followed up on is if those 12 million people were actually receiving monthly Social Security checks or direct deposits. That's actually a really big deal. Because if we assume an average $2,000 a month Social Security benefit times 12 months a year, that's $24,000 per year per person. If we multiply $24,000 by 12 million people, well, I had to turn my calculator on its side to get it to do the calculation. It comes out to $240 billion a year. That's 1/4 of the money Doge is attempting to save. No discussion was made. And sadly, Brett Baier never asked the question, were those dollars actually being paid out? Or were those people simply marked as alive? And if those dollars were being paid out each month, each year, Social Security already has the direct deposit information of the recipients or the address of record to where the checks were mailed. So they already know who, if anyone, committed that fraud. Where is the discussion from Musk and the various CEOs on this critical point of analysis? It's one thing to say 12 million people were marked as alive who weren't, and we've corrected that in the system. It's entirely another thing to say or imply that up to $240 billion a year was going to those people marked as alive in the system. And if that's the case, what will be the consequences for those people that committed that fraud? Despite all of the ludicrous Golden Fleece Award style examples now being cited by Doge, there are major questions that really need to be unpackaged simply and succinctly. Namely, who committed the fraud? How much was it? And what's going to happen to them now? Let's get a bit more specific, shall we? And until next time, this is Robert Ian with ConquerChange.com. Thanks, Carrie.